Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear students. This is our third lecture in our course, English Literature of the 17th Century. In the first two lectures, as you can see, that we explained that introduction about that age, that century, the 17th century, and the first lecture was about that age of Milton. We divided that introduction into two parts. The first part is about the age of Milton, and the other one was about the age of Dryden. Today, inshallah, we are going to move to another important part, which is about Milton. We are going to have a very nice and interesting poem by John Milton, which is Paradise Lost. This part about Milton, this poem, will be divided into 4 lectures. This will be the first one, and inshallah you will have other 3 lectures about this part, about this poem, Paradise Lost. What you need to do is, you need to, as I said before, you need to concentrate on the materials that I'm giving you here. It is expected to have about from 10 to 15 questions about this part. Also the same for the first 2 lectures about the introduction, expected also to have from 10 to 15 questions. As you know, your final exam, inshallah, will consist of 70 questions, and all of them definitely, as you know, will be multiply choices. So please study hard this part, because as I said, it will have about from 10 to 15 questions. Very important. Please pay attention to every word that I'm explaining and I'm saying here. And inshallah, as I said, once you pay attention and study what I'm saying in my lectures, inshallah, you will be able to answer your final exam quite easy. Let's start. As I said, that this will be, inshallah, our third lecture. And this is the title of our play, as you can see, Paradise Lost. And this poem, Paradise Lost, and it's one of the most important poems in English literature. So please study and enjoy this poem quite well. Of course, we need first to have an idea about Milton's life, because of course we cannot study something to a certain poet or a certain writer without having an idea about his life, because usually the life of the writer definitely affects his writings. So starting with the first slide that we have here, Milton's life. Milton's life. John Milton was born on December 9, 1608 in London, and he was born, as you see, in London. As you know, if I underline a certain line here in the text that I'm explaining in these lines, it means that inshallah, after we finish the 4 lectures, I will give you samples of the questions similar to the one that you are going to have in the final exam. So for example, this first line, how can I give you a question about it? You might have a question like this: John Milton was born on December 9, 1608 and I put a question on this part which is about London. So I might put he was born in, I'll give you 4 choices. Maybe one of them is London, the other one is Paris, the other one is in Riyadh, the other one is in Cairo, the other one is in whatever, any place that I can remember at that time. So I will put other three choices with that right choice. So this is the type of question that you might have, which means that you need to read the materials quite well and to pay attention, to understand and pay attention to each word that you that you might have in order to be able to answer the questions, inshallah, successfully. So the second line is, Milton's father was a prosperous merchant despite the fact that he had been disowned by his family when he converted from Catholicism to Protestantism. And this is one of the most important events that happened in his life, moving from Catholicism to Protestantism. Milton excelled in school. He was excellent and he was distinguished in school and went on to study privately in his 20s and 30s. In 1638, he made a trip to Italy. He made a trip to Italy. Okay, the same here. As you can see, this line is also underlined. So I might also do the same thing. I might ask, for example, about the date. This time, for example, I might ask in 1638 or 1639 or 1640 or 41, Milton made a trip to Italy. So in this case, you need to know the date here, the year in which Milton made a trip to Italy. Or I might ask the same way that I asked it in the first line, which is asking about Italy, about the place, I mean. So I might ask the question this way. In 1638, Milton made a trip to Germany, made a trip to France, made a trip to Britain or America or whatever, or made a trip, the fourth choice, which is Italy. Okay, so you need here also to pay attention to what's written here. And why he made that trip to Italy? He was studying in Florence, Siena, and in Rome. These are, of course, these are cities in Italy, but felt obliged to return home upon the outbreak of civil war in England. In 1639. Upon his return from Italy, he began planning an epic poem. And of course, this is a type of extended poems in which the writer writes about one of the themes, and usually it is heroic themes. And usually it has this type of poems usually have an exalted tone. So when he returned back from Italy, when Milton returned back from Italy, he began planning an epic poem. And as you see, it was the first ever written in English. No epic poems at that time were written in English. Some maybe were written in Latin, in different languages, but in English it was the first time that can be written at that time. Okay, now let's move to the next, please. These plans of writing this epic poem, he planned, these plans were delayed. Because of what? Because of his marriage to Mary Powell and her subsequent desertions of him. So he delayed these plans of writing the epic poem because of marriage. So as you can see, that marriage can be a push forward or it might be a push backward. But for Milton, as you can see, it was a backward push. So, and later after marriage, as you can see, she deserted him. She left him. His wife left him, and this affected definitely on him. So he couldn't write any of these poems. He couldn't write the epic poem that we mentioned before. In reaction to these events, Milton wrote, instead of writing an epic poem, he wrote a series of pamphlets calling for more leniency in the church's position on divorce. Because at that time, and as you know that in Christianity, it is not allowed to divorce, not as we have in Islam. So, and because of all these quarrels that he had with his wife, he tried to ask the church to change its position, its firm and strict position towards divorce, and to be more lenient. His argument brought him both greater publicity and angry criticism. Some people definitely supported his position. They wanted to have the same thing like him, for the church to change its position towards divorce. But of course, definitely many people wouldn't agree, because this is a religious belief. So once you come close to these religious belief, you find many people objecting, and many people refusing to even discuss such a thing. So his argument brought him both greater publicity and angry criticism from the religious establishment in England. All these religious establishments in England attacked him and criticized him severely. When the Second Civil War ended in 1648, with King Charles dethroned and executed, that King Charles, he was not just dethroned, being away from the throne, but executed. Milton welcomed the new parliament and wrote pamphlets in its support, which means that at that time Milton was against King Charles. And please remember this, because later this will affect his life. After serving for a few years in a civil position, he retired briefly to his house in Westminster because his eyesight was failing. And this is one of the miseries that Milton had in his life. And as you can see, the last sentence here, we have by 1652, he was completely blind, which means that at that time he couldn't see anything. He was blind. And of course, this disability definitely affected his psychology, affected his mind, affected his writing. Okay, so also you need to pay attention to the date here in which he was completely blind, or maybe I might change something about being blind, putting the word, instead of putting blind, putting the word dumb, or even whatever, any of the disabilities that a person might have. Okay, so you need to read this. Okay, now let's move to the next. Despite his disability, some people, when they have a certain disability, they give up life and they prefer to isolate themselves in their houses, or they do not want anyone to see them. And of course, this is completely wrong. If someone has a certain disability, definitely it can be a push forward to him. It can be a sustain, a support for him. We see many people who have many disabilities, and they could overcome these obstacles they have in their life, and of course, they could achieve success in their life. So despite it happened the same for Milton, despite his disability, Milton re-entered civil service under the protectorate of Oliver Cromwell. And of course, Oliver Cromwell was a close friend to Milton and a great support to him. The military general who ruled the British Isles from 1653 to 1658. 2 years after Cromwell's death, Milton's worst fears were realized. What were these fears? The Restoration brought Charles II back to the throne. And remember, who is Charles II? Charles II is the son of Charles I, that one that we have just mentioned in the previous slide. So, and because of that return of Charles II, Milton, or the poet, had to go into hiding to escape execution. Why? Because, as I said before, that Milton was completely against Charles I, who was the father of Charles II, who now returned to the throne again. So this made Milton try to hide, to escape. If they, of course, catch him, definitely they are going to execute him. However, he had already begun work on the great English epic. At that time, he decided to work on that great English epic, which he had planned so long before, which is that poem that we are going to have, inshallah, in details and thoroughly, which is Paradise Lost. Okay? So as you can see, Paradise Lost here is bold. So you might have a question also about Paradise Lost. So the great epic of Milton is so and so and so, Paradise Lost, whatever, Game Lost, or whatever, any of the choices, and you have here Paradise Lost. Of course, this will be the Paradise Lost. Inshallah, once we finish the fourth lecture about Milton, inshallah, you will have some samples of the questions that I will show you, similar, not the same. Do not expect me to give you the same questions in the final. So I'm just trying to shed light, to throw light on the type of questions that you might have in the final exam. So expect, inshallah, when you have these samples at the end, expect to, inshallah, have similar to these questions in the final, which means that the exam, inshallah, will be very easy, and inshallah, you will do it, inshallah, perfectly. I'm quite sure of this. So please do not be worried about the final exam. Everything, inshallah, will be fine. As I'm repeating myself, that I'll try to help as much as I can, inshallah. So now he had the opportunity to work on it in earnest. It was published, that great poem, Paradise Lost, was published in 1667, a year after the Great Fire of London. Okay, please, let's move to the next one. The greatness of Milton's epic was immediately recognized, which means that many people read it and they could recognize it and liked it so much and admired it, of course. And the admiring comments of the respected poets like John Dryden and Andrew Marvell helped restore Milton to favor, which means that that publicity, that fame that the poem got, returned him to a high position and gave him a very high fame among the poets. He spent the ensuing years at his residence in Bunhill, still writing prolifically. Milton died at home on November 8, 1674. Okay, and the same, you might have a question about this. Milton died, changed the place, instead of at home, putting anything else. At school, at the college, at the university, at his sister's home, or whatever, putting any choices in the parliament, whatever, changing the place, or again playing with the dates, and instead of saying 1674, might be 75, 76, or whatever. By all accounts, Milton led a studious and quiet life from his youth up until his death. Okay, now we finished the first point about his life. We need to move to another point about his education. Thanks to his father's wealth, young Milton got the best education money could buy. He had a private tutor. As a youngster, as a young teenager, he attended the prestigious St. Paul's Cathedral School. After he excelled at St. Paul's, he entered college at Christ College at Cambridge University. And later, he made quite a name for himself with his prodigious writing, publishing several essays and poems to high acclaim. After graduating with his master's degree in 1632, Milton was once again accommodated by his father. He was allowed to take over the family's estate near Windsor and pursue a quiet life to study. So he was leading and pursuing a quiet life of study. He spent from 1632 to 1638 his mid to late 20s reading the classics. So during his 20s, look at this year, from 1632 to 1638, which means that he spent 6 years doing what? Reading and learning the classics in Greek and Latin, and learning new theories in mathematics and music, which means that he liked to develop himself, to read more, and to do this. So spent, as you can see, 6 years of reading and learning theories, new theories in mathematics. Okay, now let's move to the next, please, slide. Milton, because of his persistence in studying and learning, he became fluent in many foreign and classical languages. So he did not only learn just one language, but he learned many languages, and not only just learning it, he became fluent, which means that he is speaking these languages fluently without any difficulty. Look, what are these languages that he learned? He learned and he was fluent in Italian, Greek, Latin, Aramaic, Hebrew, even Hebrew, French, Spanish, Anglo-Saxon, and spoke some Dutch as well. Look how this man is talented to learn all these languages and to speak them fluently, not just one language. So it is not that difficult if you are studying just one language. His knowledge of most of these languages, of course, when you are able to speak different languages and to read in different languages, definitely this will be a great help to you to know different cultures and to know how those people wrote in these different languages, how they think and so on. So again, his knowledge of most of these languages was immense and precious, which means that they gave him great chance to learn more. He wrote sonnets in Italian as a teenager. While a student at Cambridge, he was invited in his second year to address the first year students in a speech written entirely in Latin, which means that at that time when he was at the university, he was quite able to address the first year students and a speech written entirely, to write a lecture entirely in Latin and not in English. Okay, now we move to another point, which is about early works. In his 20s, when he was during his 20s, Milton wrote 5 masterful long poems. He wrote 5 masterful long poems, each of them influential and important in its own separate way. On the morning, these poems are on the morning of Christ's Nativity, Comus, Lycidas, El Concerto, and La Allegro. Through these poems, Milton honed his skills at writing narrative, dramatic, elegiac, philosophic, and lyrical poetry. He had built a firm poetic foundations through his intense study of languages. Of course, his study of languages gave him great poetic foundations, philosophy and politics, and fused it with his uncanny sense of tone and dictions. Even in these early poems, Milton's literary output was guided by his faith in God. So all the poems that he wrote, you can feel that sense of his faith in God. He was quite a religious person. So whenever you read any of the works of Milton, you can get that sense or that feeling of faith in God. Okay, let's move. Milton believed that, and this is important, these are important lines because it summarized the whole philosophy of Milton and his concepts and his ideas. Milton believed that all poetry served a social, philosophical, and religious purpose. So he believed that poetry, when someone writes poetry, it is not for the sake of fun, and it's not for the sake of having enjoyment and having pleasure. No, he had a certain aim when he wrote all his poems. He believed, so he believed, not only just think, he believed that all poetry should be directed to serve what? A social, philosophical, and religious purpose. So whenever he wrote something, you will find that he was directing what he wrote to any of these trends, to any of these aims, either to serve a social or a philosophical or a religious person. So for him, poetry should have a message that that poetry should convey to the readers. Either this message is a social one or a philosophical one or a religious one. He thought that poetry should glorify God. So on the religious level, that poetry should glorify, give high and great significance to God, and promote religious values. So he should promote these values, these religious values that a man should have. And what else? Poetry also should enlighten readers and help people to become better Christians. Of course, this is for his belief because he was Christian. So he was, of course, speaking here about his religion, which was at that time, of course, Christianity. So he believed that what he wrote should support and should enlighten, should help people to become religious people and good, more religious people, especially better in Christianity. Okay. Aside from his poetic successes, Milton was also a prolific writer of essays and pamphlets. These prose writings did not bring Milton public acclaim. In fact, since his essays and pamphlets argued against the established views of most of England, Milton was even the object of threats. Nevertheless, he continued to form the basis for his political and theological beliefs in the form of essays and pamphlets. So he was able to write many of these essays and pamphlets to express his views about political matters at that time and theological also beliefs. Okay, now we move to another important point, which is about his attitude, Milton's attitude towards women and marriage. And of course, this is an important part also you need to pay attention to, because we need to see how marriage, women in general, affected his thinking and affected his philosophy. So much because definitely this poem, which is Paradise Lost, definitely has something here about women and the influence of women on men. So women and marriage. Much of Milton's social commentary in Paradise Lost, our poem, focuses on the proper role of women. So you'll find that when you are reading A Paradise Lost, he is focusing on the proper, suitable role of women. In Book 4, he makes clear that he does not think men and women are equals. So this is one of his beliefs, that men and women are equal. And of course, this is the concept. This is what Milton believes, and it has nothing to do with me. Of course, I do believe in the equality. So we are reading only the beliefs and the ideas of Milton. So clear that he does not think men and women are equals, alluding to biblical passages that identify man as the master of women. He quoted some, of course, passages from the Bible which affirm these ideas that men and women are not equal, and that men are the masters of women. Of course, this he quoted from the Bible. Although Milton viewed women, he saw women as inferior, which means he saw women in a lower stage or a lower position, inferior to men, believing that wives should be subservient to their husbands. So he believed that wives should be subservient to their husbands. He did not see himself as a woman hater. So in spite of all these views and in spite of his attitude, which was quite clear in Paradise Lost, he did not believe in himself, and he did not see himself as a woman hater, that he hates women. He didn't say that I hate women at the time. In Paradise Lost, he distances himself from the misogyny popular in his time. The belief, what's misogyny? This is the belief that women are utterly inferior to men, essentially evil and generally to be avoided. Okay. Now, Milton's characters. Adam, who is the main character in Paradise Lost, voices this harsh view of womankind, but only after the fall. So at the very beginning of the poem, you didn't see Adam declaring his view that women are inferior to men. But after the fall, he, of course, declared that view. So Milton's character Adam voices this harsh view of womankind, but only after the fall, as an expression of anger and frustration. Put simply, Milton's early views in Paradise Lost may be misogynistic by today's standards, but he nevertheless presents Eve's wifely role as an important one, as Adam and Eve help one another to become better and more complete individuals. Milton's views on marriage are mainstream today, but they were viewed as shocking and heretical in his own time. Milton was a pioneer for the right of divorce in an age when divorce was prohibited by nearly all denominations. He felt that conversation and mental companionship were supremely important in marriage, and admits that his first marriage might have failed due to lack in this regard. He also argued that the partners in a marriage, and this is something that you need to think of, the partners in a marriage must complement each other. His portrayal of Adam and Eve after the fall is a vivid example of his belief that two people can complement each other, smoothing out one another's faults and enhancing each other's strengths. The epic, and this is of course a definition of the epic, it's an extended narrative poem with a heroic subject matter and theme and an exalted tone. At the early age of 16, Milton already aspired to write the great English epic, as he read the classical epics in school. Homer's Odyssey, of course, he read these classical epic before start writing this in English. And Iliad, Virgil, Aeneid, he began to fantasize about bringing such artistic brilliance to English language. And as you know, before Milton, no epic poem was written in English. Milton considered many topics for his epic. Early on, he thought that the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table was a noble topic. Then, as he grows slightly older, he hoped to write an epic about Oliver Cromwell, who took control of England in 1653, after helping to dethrone and execute King Charles. Judging from these two topics, it's clear that Milton wanted to write his epic on a distinctly British topic that would inspire nationalist pride in his country. Okay, such a topic would also mimic Homer's and Virgil's nationalist epics of strong, virtuous warriors and noble battles. However, Milton abandoned both of these ideas, and for a time gave up the notion of writing an epic at all. Okay, by the mid-1650s, Milton returned to an idea he had previously had for a verse play, the story of Adam and Eve. He concluded that the story might fail as a drama, but succeeded as an epic. In 1656, the blind Milton began to recite verse each morning to one of his two daughters. Because he was blind and he couldn't write, he was reciting this verse to one of his daughter who was writing to him this. who wrote his poem down for him. Because he was not able to write, he asked one of his two daughters to write instead of him. Milton continued to dictate Paradise Lost for several years, finished in 1667 when it was first published in 10 books. Can you imagine it? The poem was published in 10 books. Okay, of course, definitely we are not going to study together 10 books. Definitely we will have some selections. Okay, Milton soon returned to revise his epic, redividing it into 12 books as the classical epics were divided, and published in its 32nd edition in 1671. Later in 1671 he published his final work, Paradise Regained, the sequel of his great epic. Due to his strong religious beliefs, Milton thought this work surpassed Paradise Lost in both its art and its message, though most readers today would disgrace. Okay, now I have already finished the third lecture. Inshallah, we will continue in the next lecture also about Paradise Lost and about Milton. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best. Inshallah, see you in the coming lecture. Thank you.